Hi everybody, my name is Adam. Welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. So as the title of this implies, I want to do a video comparing a new computer for Pro Tools. I recently just did a comparison video on an iMac 2017 and an iMac Pro on how those two compared when using it for video editing with Final Cut Pro. And as you can see, the iMac Pro is right there behind me. I do use that for video editing on that island behind me. It is a really great computer. It was a very expensive computer, but it does work very well when it comes to 4K video editing in Final Cut Pro. So we here at the studio, we also have our Pro Tools system that we use for audio, and Pro Tools obviously isn't as demanding on the computer as Final Cut with video editing, but we are running an older computer. We have a 2017 Mac Pro that we purchased back in 2012, and since then we've been using it, and it's been a workhorse for us. So at this point, we're starting to run into a little bit of a brick wall when it comes to performance in Pro Tools on that computer. It really comes down to the fact that a lot of plugins nowadays are starting to use more and more CPU power, which is fine. I don't mind if they're going to give me better sounding plugins. I don't mind them using more CPU power. But a lot of the Slate plugins that I've been using a lot eat up a lot of processing power. And I recently purchased a Ozone 8, which I've been using a little bit for mastering and trying that out. I really like the plugin a lot, but it is a pig when it comes to eating up CPU. So I'm really not able to use that very effectively in my sessions anymore when it comes to mastering. I master in the same session I mix in, and I know the plugin itself really was meant to be used as just maybe a stereo mix in a separate session, but I do like to master in my mix sessions for a couple of different reasons. I also run 96K, which is a CPU intensive sample rate, but you know, I'm not gonna lower my sample rate, and I would like to continue mastering in the same session. Well, I am gonna continue mastering in the same session. That's not gonna change. So to keep my workflow the same, we really need to upgrade our computer at some point. So the offerings from Apple are pretty slim. There's an iMac, there's an iMac Pro, there's the Mac Mini, and or a laptop. And one of our biggest things was we really love the widescreen that we're using. I love the widescreen with Pro Tools. It's a great monitor. You get a lot of real estate, but you know, the only computer really to run that with would be a Mac Mini, and I'm not really sure if the Mac Mini is gonna hold up the way I want it to, and I'm not sure. I don't want to buy one, test it out, and not be happy with it. There's a whole lot of reasons. I'm gonna have to, regardless, I'm probably gonna have to buy a PCI expansion chassis, which is what I did, in order to run Pro Tools, because we have an HD native card, which is PCIe, and I can't run that with anything else. So Apple is supposed to be coming out with a Mac Pro this summer that is supposed to be modular. I don't know what that's going to include. I don't know what it's going to look like. My hope is that they're going to redesign the line and make it how it should have been, and it will be an upgradable form factor, and it's going to be what professionals really want in a computer from Apple. Unfortunately, I do think it's going to be expensive, and I think it's probably going to be too expensive and overkill for what we need with Pro Tools. So what am I to do? Well, I got thinking. I'm using an iMac Pro back here for video editing, but while I'm not video editing, I'm up here, and that's just sitting there by itself. Why don't I just move that thing over here, and I can just do both right here at the desk? So the only disadvantage of this is that we don't get to use the widescreen monitor. We're instead using we're using the 5K 27-inch monitor, so I'm going to see how well this performs with Pro Tools, and since I don't have to buy another computer to test it out, I'm going to be able to just use this one. The only obstacle is I've got to go ahead and basically install all the software and plugins onto that computer, install the the PCI card and then give it a try. In fact, I purchased this from Amazon, so if it doesn't work, I can send it back. But this is the Aikido Node Lite, which I'll be using for the PCIe card. And so, yeah, we'll see how it works out. I don't expect to finish the install today, so probably be next couple of days. Be seamless in the video. So just to highlight a little bit about what each computer has, I did go through the iMac Pro already on the other video, but I'll refresh. And as you can see in this computer, I am running Mac OS High Sierra. I can't go any higher than that with the GTX card in it, so I haven't switched over to Mojave. So this is a mid-2010 Mac Pro. It's got two 3.46 gigahertz Intel Xeon processors, which I've maxed out at this point, and 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's running an SSD drive on the OS, and then I've got the GTX 980 Ti, which is an amazing video card, but doesn't really help with Pro Tools. So I did run a couple of tests in Geekbench and Cinebench just to see what we could get out of these guys. And as you can see here, the Mac Pro single core is 2741, multi-core was 18585, and the iMac Pro single core is basically double that at 5228, and then the multi-core is again doubled at 37012. And then OpenCL, which really isn't that big of a deal. You would expect, this to actually be a little bit closer because it's more using the video card. And this is 139,062, and then the iMac Pro was 171,602. So those aren't going to really matter that much, and at the end of the day, I don't really care about any of this stuff because it's really going to come down to one simple test that I'm going to do this, and it's going to be on a session, the most recent session that I worked on, which was giving me all sorts of problems as far as the CPU, and I'm going to go into that and I'm going to show you. One other test I do have is the Cinebench. So the other thing that I found interesting with the Cinebench here is that it shows you, I didn't run the CPUs on here, so this is kind of pointless, but it shows you the cores and the gigahertz, and as you can see on the Mac Pro that I'm currently using, it's got 12 cores, 24 threads at 3.46 gigahertz, and the iMac Pro is running 10 cores, 20 threads at 3 gigahertz. On paper, the Mac Pro looks like a solid computer and that I shouldn't really be having any problems. So this has been my whole dilemma to begin with, and what I've been trying to find is like, how much difference are we going to see when it comes to these newer generation processors over these older ones, when on paper, when you look at the cores, the threads, the speeds are better in this case, but you're also going to be putting in, the RAM's going to be faster, the bus speed, everything else is going to be an increase, and the processors themselves are more efficient. So this is going to be a really interesting test, and luckily I'm going to be able to do it on a really great computer and see how well this works. So I'm excited to see how this test runs, and I'm hoping it does great, right? So let's go into my session that I'm going to test. All right, so this session in particular was a cover song that we recently did with a collab artist, Emma Heasters, and it came out really, really well. Really happy with it, but it was giving me a lot of the CPU issues where, I can't, the computer can't run it, blah, blah, blah. Let me show you. There you go. Pro Tools ran out of CPU memory, tried deactivating or removing some native plugins. So the best way for me to get around this, of course, is that I end up freezing as many tracks as possible. Now, this is even after freezing most of my tracks, and the biggest culprit here is the Ozone 8, which I'm running up here on my master bus, but I'm not running that many tracks. In fact, let's see here, I've got 2 vocals, we've got 2 electric guitar tracks, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we're running like 18 tracks. A few of those are stereo. But you know, one of those was an instrument track, but I did freeze that one as well. So you can see I'm not running a lot of tracks. There's only 18, but I am running, again, a lot of reverbs here and delays. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got 9 effects tracks, which is a combination of different reverbs and delays. And then on top of that, I've got my mastering bus. Now, of course, if I take off that ozone plugin with the tracks frozen, oh, well, I've still got an issue there. Oh, well, see? So I'm clearly having some issues with this. And again, everything's set up right. So if I take off all of these, I'm still running into problems. So I don't know, right? So let's go ahead. I'm just gonna freeze. So at this point, I'm not really running anything. Why is this being a problem? Oh, because I'm an idiot, right? So anyway, I'm gonna increase the buffer size to as big as it can go. So with a smaller buffer size, even with just a few tracks open here, I mean the 9 effects tracks, plus I've got 2 vocal tracks open. The rest have been frozen at this point, so I'm not running that many plugins. I can't run it with the buffer settings higher, so I'm an idiot. But let's put back ozone and then a couple of these hogs. And then I'm gonna start running into this again. So, like I said before, I don't want to switch my workflow and start mastering into a different session. I want to keep it within the same session. It just works better for me. I'm not going to switch down to 90 from 96 to 48. I'm not even sure if that's going to help, but God, I had that on my mouth the whole time. I'm not even sure. So I don't want to switch down from 96 to 48. I'm not even sure that's going to work. I like the way 96 sounds better anyway. I've been using that for several years. I'm not going to switch at this point. So let's see how the iMac Pro does with this session. We just ran it a couple times and we saw it's not going to run with Ozone 8. And this was, of course, with all the tracks frozen. I guess one other thing I could do is I could take all these off. I can unfreeze all these guys. And then we'll see how well this works with the tracks unfrozen. You can unfreeze. No. Stop. Okay. Oh, that's one other test I want to run is bounce speed. See how that works. Okay, so now I've unfroze all the tracks and I don't have my mastering plugins in. Let's see how well it runs. Okay, so we're gonna have some issues regardless. Now the one thing I can do, of course, is I can bounce without having to play it. So I'm gonna keep everything unfrozen. I'm gonna put back all my mastering plugins and then let's just bounce this and let's just see how well this does. Let's just call this something else. Call this dance test 1 Mac Pro. And so as you can see, this isn't even bouncing in real time because it's going so slow. It's at 0.6, so it would be quicker for me to actually bounce this in real time and not offline. But I can't because the processing is too much. So I wouldn't even be able to bounce it in real time. Of course, if I froze it, I might be able to bounce it in real time. But then again, it may end up just as easily giving me a spike and end up stopping. So I'm now going to take the time today and install everything onto the Mac Pro, move it up here, and we're going to do some more tests. I'll run the video again, and we're going to see how well it runs. So I'm back. This only took a few hours to get all the plugins I'm using in the session installed on the iMac Pro. There's a lot of other plugins I still need to install, but I'll worry about those if this works. Now, I opened up the session only to make sure all the plugins were installed and I didn't have any problems. I haven't hit the play button yet, I wanted to do it on camera just so I would be experiencing this for the first time while I was filming. So I didn't pull up the system usage guide that I had last time on the other one, unfortunately, but on this I did pull it up on here. So I'm going to play this as is and we'll see what happens. Okay, so far so good. Let's check one thing. Okay, so I'm going to change the buffer size to 2048, which was what it was on the other computer. Okay, so we've got all our plugins. So now let's turn on the mastering ones and let's see what happens. Ooh, it's playing. I don't wanna be alone tonight. And there's no issues. Okay, well, that's a good thing. I don't have any tracks frozen. And it seems to be taking it pretty much in stride. Can you light the fire? So let's see. Now I apologize, I'm not running the audio through digitally into a QuickTime into the recording. So you're hearing it through my microphone. I apologize. I didn't want to get that set up into this because this really wasn't about the audio. It was just about the computer. All right, this is great. This is great news. I'm super, super happy and super excited. Now the other thing I wanted to do was let's test the bounce speed. We'll call this iMac, and let's bounce. Well, it's twice as fast, but I will say the bounce speed is still a little disappointing at 1.2. I understand. I guess I understand. So that's still kind of a bummer, but it is better. Let me just freeze a track. I just kind of want to get a sense of how long that's going to take. That's actually a lot faster. We didn't do a test on this on the other computer. I should have, but I didn't. The other one I remember being just slightly above real time, probably about 1.5 times real time. So this is actually pretty cool. So the freeze function is pretty quick. That being said, I'm not really going to be using freeze as much now because I've got a faster computer, but there'll be times, for instance, when I bounce, say, like Melodyne, which I'm apt to do, so I would go in and I'd commit insert. Let's just see what happens there. Ooh, God, that's actually really fast. So it's a little bit faster with the committing, and at the end of the day, I'm able to play it back with the mastering. Oh, of course I gotta authorize it. So okay, good. So everything seems to be working pretty well here. So I mean, everything works really well. I'm not angry. Ooh, let's real quick. I'll do a test and see. Let's just keep creeping down on buffer size and see. All right, so I lowered the buffer to 1024. Seems to be okay. Let's lower it further. Okay, I'm at 512 and. So at 512, it's still not having an issue. Let's move on down to 256. Yeah, that seems to be okay. And just for fun, let's keep moving down. Oh, well, there we go. 128. So 128 is when it starts having an issue. Truth is, when I'm mixing, it doesn't matter. I'm going to probably just keep it at the highest buffer rate anyway. I really only need the lower buffers when I'm actually recording, and at that point I'm not going to have enough stuff on there like that to really to matter at all. So I know this test was a little, I don't know if it was fair, because I'm going from a 2010 Mac Pro to an iMac Pro. So there's a huge difference in the technology, the processors being 6 generations higher or so, maybe higher. So it's not a end-all be-all test, because really probably the best test for this would have been the Mac Mini, because that's more of an affordable Pro Tools type of machine. And after running these tests, it gives me, I think, at least an idea that a Mac Mini probably would run these pretty well. So I don't think that, if you can try to extrapolate what the iMac Pro with its CPUs over into a Mac Mini, I think the Mac Mini will probably be able to handle this session as well, but I don't know. If anybody wants to comment on how well the Mac Mini works for their sessions, I'd love to know. So I think I'm going to end up putting all the other plugins on this Mac Pro, and I'm going to continue using this and just use this computer for both Pro Tools and video editing for now until, maybe we'll see what happens in the summer with the new with the new Apple Mac Pros, see what kind of pricing we get on those. And I've had my Apple earbuds in this whole goddamn time. Sorry about that. I'm an idiot. So that goes to show you, I use my earbuds so damn much, and there's so many times that I just have them in my ears I don't even realize it. And that's a fantastic Apple product, just FYI. So I just went through this whole video and had them in my ears like an idiot. Anyway, I hope this video was somewhat informative. I got a lot out of it because now I feel a little bit more comfortable. It's interesting to show, even the specs between the two computers, whereas you have a higher clock speed on these older CPUs and more cores and more threads, but the newer the newer computer, whether it's just the architecture of the CPUs and the new, the bus speed, the RAM speed, and everything else involved, it's able to run a lot more effectively, efficiently. So anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you soon.